The honourable member for Yarmouth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last night in grandiose fashion and not so humbly, the Premier announced to this House that due to the interesting budget practices of the NDP, which includes an HST hike, that the province will have a $446 million surplus this year. Mr. Speaker, back in 2009, the people of Yarmouth just needed $3 million to keep the ferry going for one more year to allow the community to transition while maintaining that vital sea and economic link. My question to the Minister of Economic and Rural Development is, Mr. Speaker, with the surplus being what it is, will the Minister admit to this House that not giving that $3 million to the ferry has had marginal, if any, impact on the province's four-year plan to balance the books?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to stand in my place. And first of all, I would bring to the attention of the House that the $3 million that I've heard the member opposite quote, that the number wasn't $3 million. It was much, much larger than that. And Mr. Speaker, as we all know, now, Mr. Speaker, we've been down this road. Is that the ferry, the CAT ferry, wasn't a viable, sustainable operation for Yarmouth. The ridership had reduced by over 70%, Mr. Speaker. There was not a business case there, Mr. Speaker, for continuation of the ferry. We did something that was a hard decision, a tough decision, but we had to think of what was in the best interest of all Nova Scotians, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Yarmouth on your first supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, let's review the math. $9 million to subsidize that ferry for one more year. The province would all have to pay $3 million to cancel the contract already, so we're down to $6 million. The municipalities came up with another $3 million that they asked the province to match. So $3 million from this province would have been required to subsidize that service for one more year. $3 million, that's it. I understand why the cabinet ministers aren't aware of it, because the Premier wouldn't even bring that request to cabinet when the municipalities came forward with the proposal. Mr. Speaker, there's been no evidence given to this House to suggest why this decision was made, nothing tabled. The only thing given to us and the public is that they didn't have the money to do it. But lo and behold, we have tons of money today. So my question to the Minister is, in light of this budget, will the Minister admit that the decision to cut the Yarmouth ferry was political and not based on the financial position of the province?
The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Yeah, we use it as a case of
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've got to say it disappoints me to hear the member opposite talk such rhetoric when he knows, for one, certainly this government and myself as minister have always tried to work cooperatively with that particular member. I would also say, Mr. Speaker, that this funding of coming from municipalities, it's I don't know where that's at because I've never heard of it. Mr. Speaker, we were the only game in town. Mr. Speaker, I wrote to the U.S. government, to the federal government. Mr. Speaker, the best of my knowledge, there was only one game in town, and that was the provincial government, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Yarmouth on your final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I know that the members opposite would like this ferry issue to go away, but I'm sorry, too many people are suffering because of that decision. It's not going to go away until there's a ferry back in Yarmouth. Now, Mr. Speaker, with the leader of the official opposition committing a Liberal-led government to funding a viable service in Yarmouth, the restoration and long-term operations of such, and with the member from Queens issuing a statement insinuating that the Liberal position on the ferry was the same, in fact, as the NDP's position, and with the minister's recent comments here in, talking about cooperation, that sort of stuff. I would like to ask this minister if he can identify any funding that the government has in its plan that'll be in place to restore the Yarmouth Ferry and to ensure its long-term operations.
Yes, that's right. The Honourable Minister of Economic and Rural Development and Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we stand, certainly I as Minister, stand by the decision that was made by Cabinet, and I reiterate it was a tough decision, and tough decisions are hard to make, and we had to make a decision and we made one. Mr. Speaker, we have made a large investment in the southwest region of the province of Nova Scotia. We've done we launched just recently. I was down there on Sunday and Monday with the launch of My Nova Scotia campaign. Mr. Speaker, we've invested another $400,000 in Explore Our Shores. Mr. Speaker, we've invested $150,000 in the 250 anniversary. Mr. Speaker, we continue to make investments. There's an ask that's being considered now for the Southwest region around the task force. We were looking at that, Mr. Speaker, and we are seriously considering it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.